Support the channel by hitting like, subscribing, and leaving a comment. It makes a big difference. The old pickup truck, a battered beast of American steel long past its prime, chewed gravel and dirt, throwing rooster tails of dust into the sickly yellow glow of its taillights. Donald Granger gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles looked like peeled stone, white against the dark leather. The winding dirt road, barely wide enough for one vehicle, climbed through the Missouri timberland, thick with oak and pine, a claustrophobic tunnel of shadow and sound. Megan, pressed against the passenger door, kept glancing backward, her breath coming in shallow, ragged puffs. "Faster, Don. We must be over the county line before the first bleed," she hissed, her voice taut, stretched thin by panic. The bleed was that agonizing moment 10 minutes before sunrise when the darkness started losing its absolute quality, and the world felt vulnerable. They had left the community an hour ago. The town, nestled deep in a secluded hollow, now felt like a bad dream receding in a fever. It was not abandoned. That was the terrifying part. The settlement remained held, silent, watching. In the brief, terrified glimpses Donald had caught in the rearview mirror as they sped away, every window they passed held a judgment, a deep, silent accusation rooted in generations of obedience. Donald's fear was not just of being caught by his neighbors. It was the cold, inescapable dread that they ran from a power far older and less forgiving than any human construct. He pushed the gas pedal to the floorboards, the engine groaning in protest, kicking up more debris. They drove at 28 miles an hour on a road meant for 15, praying the springs would hold. "The bridge is 2 miles, honey. Just 2 more miles." Donald's own voice was a strained whisper, thick with the effort of holding his body rigid. The air in the cab was humid, smelling of old motor oil and the coppery tang of pure, undiluted fear. Then, the old pickup truck, a battered beast of American steel long past its prime, chewed gravel and dirt, throwing rooster tails of dust into the sickly yellow glow of its taillights. Donald Granger gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles looked like peeled stone, white against the dark leather. The winding dirt road, barely wide enough for one vehicle, climbed through the Missouri timberland, thick with oak and pine, a claustrophobic tunnel of shadow and sound. Megan, pressed against the passenger door, kept glancing backward, her breath coming in shallow, ragged puffs. "Faster, Don. We must be over the county line before the first bleed," she hissed, her voice taut, stretched thin by panic. The bleed was that agonizing moment 10 minutes before sunrise when the darkness started losing its absolute quality, and the world felt vulnerable. They had left the community an hour ago. The town, nestled deep in a secluded hollow, now felt like a bad dream receding in a fever. It was not abandoned. That was the terrifying part. The settlement remained held, silent, watching. In the brief, terrified glimpses Donald had caught in the rearview mirror as they sped away, every window they passed held a judgment, a deep, silent accusation rooted in generations of obedience. Donald's fear was not just of being caught by his neighbors. It was the cold, inescapable dread that they ran from a power far older and less forgiving than any human construct. He pushed the gas pedal to the floorboards, the engine groaning in protest, kicking up more debris. They drove at 28 miles an hour on a road meant for 15, praying the springs would hold. "The bridge is 2 miles, honey. Just 2 more miles." Donald's own voice was a strained whisper, thick with the effort of holding his body rigid. The air in the cab was humid, smelling of old motor oil and the coppery tang of pure, undiluted fear. Then, Megan pointed, her finger trembling violently, behind us. Listen. It was not a sound you heard with your ears. It was a concussion that hammered their chest cavities. From the dense thicket off the eastern side of the road, where the timber was heaviest and oldest, came a series of unnatural tearing cracks. They were not the quiet snaps of branches broken by deer. These were the brutal, shattering sounds of trees, thick 20-foot trunks being displaced by brute, unrelenting force. It sounded like something colossal, built of granite and muscle, was moving through the woods with determined, casual speed, ignoring the natural resistance of the forest. Donald swore under his breath, a sharp, choked noise. Whatever it was, it kept pace, moving parallel to the road, gaining on them faster than the truck could accelerate on this surface. The chase ended abruptly. With a grinding shriek of splitting wood and tearing bark, a massive ancient oak, the kind that had probably watched the Civil War unfold, fell across the road ahead. It did not snap neatly. It was pushed, toppled by an invisible hand, landing with a devastating thud that shook the ground right up into the tires. The barrier was complete, impassable. Donald stomped on the brake, the pickup skidding sideways on the loose gravel. Before he could process the instinct to reverse, the woods behind them erupted in chaos. The noise was not a howl or a snarl. It was a churning, deep-chested growl, a sound too voluminous and resonant to be merely animal. It spoke of immense hunger and utter lack of patience. An impact, felt more than heard, slammed into the back of the truck. It was not the bump of a fender. It was the sheer force of a physical blast. The pickup's frame warped. The windshield cracked instantly, webbing out from the impact point, and the vehicle lost all semblance of control. They sailed off the edge of the shoulder, plunging down a steep, brush-covered embankment. Metal shrieked, glass shattered, and the world became a spinning metallic coffin of inertia, tumbling and rolling until it finally came to rest against a nest of jagged rock at the bottom of the ravine. Silence returned, broken only by the drip of coolant and the ragged, shallow breathing of the occupants. Donald managed to kick open his door, wrenching his body free. His left arm was useless, hanging limp, and the sharp, cold air of the pre-dawn woods instantly bit into a dozen small, tearing cuts on his face. He staggered onto the debris-littered ground, his vision swimming. Above the ravine, piercingly clear and impossibly bright, hung the full moon, heavy, white, and commanding. Donald felt it instantly. The fear and the adrenaline that had been powering him suddenly turned inward, becoming a catalyst. His bones and sinews, already stressed, began the sickening, rapid rearrangement. It was agonizing, brutal. His rational thought dissolved under the wave of primal, searing instinct. His clothes tore as his mass swelled, and his musculature rebuilt itself into the squat, powerful form of the large, stocky werewolf of his lineage. From the blackness where the road used to be, a silhouette stepped into the moonlight. It was not the familiar shape of one of his transformed kin. This thing was too tall, unnaturally angular, its mass overwhelming, broken like a dead, rotting piece of heavy timber. Donald, consumed by newly awakened instinct and blinding fury, charged, letting out a raw, terrifying roar. Megan, whose own body was beginning the painful internal shift, a burning in the gut and a desperate tightness in the skin. Turned back only once. The terror rooted her to the spot for a critical second. She saw the unknown creature towering over Donald, utterly monstrous, and watched as it ended him without visible effort, without sound, save for a wet, sickening crunch of bone. The realization struck her like a physical blow. This was not a fight. It was an elimination. She ran. Hearing the renewed sound of the forest splintering behind her, fueled by the memory of the light draining from her husband's eyes, she scrambled up the opposite side of the ravine toward the cliff edge. Her breath sawed in her lungs. Her transformation was halfway complete, ripping her body apart. At the sheer edge of the rock face, overlooking the rushing, ice-cold river below, Megan made a choice that defied instinct and logic. She leaped. She plummeted down into the roaring black water, allowing the darkness and the numbing current to seize her. The river swallowed her without a trace, pulling her far, far away from the carnage and the horror. Travis Moreland hated the smell of cheap frying oil. It clung to the air of the roadside diner like a greasy shroud, marrying itself to the faint scent of stale cigarette smoke and institutional floor cleaner. He sat in a vinyl booth, the seat cracked and taped with silver duct tape, nursing a cup of coffee that tasted mostly like bitter ash and hot metal. Outside, the sun beat down on the cracked asphalt of the parking lot, raising the temperature to an oppressive 92 degrees Fahrenheit, making the air shimmer above the blacktop. Travis was looking for a new story. Specifically, he sought a story that was not complete bull. His channel, Moreland's Mysteries, had built a decent following, a little over 500,000 subscribers, by walking the fine line between debunking fabricated nonsense and exploiting genuinely unsettling local accounts. He needed grit. He needed something that smelled like old dirt and genuine fear. He checked his notes on his tablet, scrolling through local flavor. Big muddy monster sightings, ghost lights near the railroad tracks, the usual small-town stuff that rarely paid off. Mr. Moreland? Travis Moreland? Travis looked up. Standing over his booth was the owner of the establishment, Lucas Heron. Lucas was about 30, solid, athletic build, but carried himself with a coiled stillness that Travis pegged instantly as ex-military or perhaps a former high school wrestling champion who never quit lifting. He wore a crisp, if grease-stained, white t-shirt and a faded denim apron. Travis put on his professional, weary but charming smile. "That's me. Just passing through." Lucas's eyes, dark and set deep beneath thick brows, widened slightly. "I knew it was you. I have been watching your stuff for maybe 4 years now. The investigation at the old mill? That was gold, man. Pure gold." He paused, looking genuinely excited. Travis felt a familiar surge of pride, tempered with professional resignation. "Appreciate that, Lucas. Just trying to keep it real. Lots of garbage out there." Lucas slid into the opposite side of the booth, uninvited, leaning forward conspiratorially. The faint smile slid off his face, replaced by an intensity that shifted the whole dynamic of the conversation. The easy fan worship evaporated. "You are looking for genuine, right? The stuff nobody can explain away with flashlights and wind chimes?" Lucas's voice dropped, instantly hushed, cutting through the low background noise of the frying kitchen. "That's the business, yeah." Travis picked up his lukewarm coffee cup, giving the man his full attention. Lucas's eyes flickered toward the kitchen entrance, then fixed on Travis. They were unnervingly steady, now holding something tight and sharp. "Have you ever heard about the town? The one deep in the woods, maybe 60 miles east of here. The one where they only lived, well, the ones who could change?" Lucas did not use the term werewolf, but the implication hung heavy in the greasy air. The town that just disappeared. Hundreds of them. No trace, no bodies, just gone. Travis chuckled, a cynical, dismissive noise. "Sounds like the local flavor of the month, Lucas. Every state has a ghost town where the population got raptured. Usually it is just the timber industry drying up." Lucas did not laugh back. His posture stiffened, his jaw tightening. His voice, when he spoke again, was lower, insistent, bordering on demanding. "No, Mr. Moreland. This was not a town that dried up. This was a settlement built in the 1800s, isolated, protected. They were strong. They had their own system. And then, one full moon cycle, the lights went out. All of them. Poof." He leaned closer, and Travis caught a faint, strange undertone beneath the cooking grease. A sharp, almost mineral scent, like whetstone and iron filings. It existed. It was taken. And I know the way back in. I'm telling you, deep in those trees, in that thick fog that never really lifts, there is something hunting what is left of that place. The forest floor still remembers what happened there. Travis felt a sudden, unpleasant prickle of irrational excitement mixed with dread. Lucas's intensity was grounded, almost solemn. It was the absolute certainty that gave the story its unnerving weight. This was not local folklore. This sounded like a confession. A genuine town populated by a secluded group of shapeshifters, vanished without a trace. The story was dynamite. The narrative possibilities were staggering. He looked hard at Lucas, trying to discern the angle, the con. But Lucas met his gaze without flinching. Only intensity burned there. "You are offering to guide us?" Travis asked, keeping his voice even. "Nobody finds it by accident. The roads are gone. The memory of the place is guarded," Lucas affirmed. "But I know the paths. I will take you." Travis suppressed a shudder, ignoring the small, irrational voice screaming caution inside his skull. Lucas's eyes, fixed on him as he spoke of the disappeared, were too dark, too empty, too hungry. They were not the eyes of a guide, but the eyes of someone leading a lamb to slaughter. The story was too good, the opportunity too immense. Travis extended his hand across the sticky Formica table. "Deal, Lucas. You lead. We film. We split the profits 50-50 on the back end. When do we leave?" Lucas's massive hand swallowed Travis's. The grip was shockingly strong, almost painful. Lucas did not smile, but a shadow of satisfaction crossed his face. "Tomorrow, Mr. Moreland. Tomorrow we go into the quiet." Travis worked efficiently, letting his professional detachment mask the gnawing unease Lucas Heron had awakened. By late afternoon, his small crew had converged on a dusty, unincorporated settlement 20 miles closer to the forested wilderness. First, there was Ben Walker, the primary cinematographer. Ben was a staunch, no-nonsense skeptic, a man who saw the world through the cold, unforgiving lens of physics. He was essential for Travis, providing the necessary counterweight to the often ludicrous claims they investigated. Next, Toby Grant, the sound engineer. Toby was sensitive. He did not necessarily believe in ghosts, but he believed deeply in anomalies. Toby could record the subtle scrape of a mouse 33 yards away and categorize the difference between wind noise and a true low-frequency vibration. He carried the burden of the unseen, listening for the secrets the air held. Then there was Kayla Benson, the logistics coordinator. Sharp, organized, and essential for keeping the operation grounded in reality, making sure the batteries were charged and the permits were filed. She was the anchor. Next, Dana Clark, the second camera operator. Dana possessed a sharp eye for the visual anomaly, always seeking the single damning frame of truth. Finally, Johnny Blake, the field researcher and folk historian. Johnny collected every tall tale. He knew the difference between regional gossip and entrenched, deeply personal mythology. They rented 2 rooms in the only motel nearby, a sad, faded structure whose cinder block walls suggested a history of bad decisions and fleeting stays. The air inside the room was thick with the smell of institutional disinfectant trying and failing to mask the permanent dampness. Travis laid out the map on the stained carpet. "Lucas is our guide. He claims to know the way into a lost settlement, maybe 60 miles further in. His story is high octane, a werewolf community that vanished overnight years ago." Ben scoffed, tightening a lens onto a camera body. "Sounds like a script, Trav." "It does," Travis admitted. "But the way Lucas told it, the lack of performance got under my skin. We are going to treat this like a forensic search, not a ghost hunt. Document the physical space. If it is just a forgotten mining town, fine. But if there is something genuinely weird about the evacuation, that is the narrative." They spent the evening gathering local intelligence. The neighboring town was barely holding on. Just a handful of weather-beaten shacks, a general store that sold more bait than groceries, and locals who sat on splintered porch steps, nursing lukewarm beer. The atmosphere was slow, heavy, smelling strongly of pine sap and the faint, burnt scent of diesel engines. The residents did not need prompting. When Johnny mentioned a town deep in the hills, their casual replies were more chilling than any frantic denial. A woman, her face a road map of wrinkles, rocking slowly on her porch, affirmed, "Oh yeah, that one. Been quiet for years." They kept to themselves. They were not like us. An elderly man, whittling wood that smelled of smoke, nodded sagely. "We're not exactly folks, no. They were blessed with a change, but they were proud. Too proud, maybe." Their voices were utterly devoid of the sensationalism Travis was used to. They spoke of the vanished community the way they might discuss a hard winter or a poor turnip crop, with quiet acceptance of a terrible yet natural fact. This lack of hysteria lent the whole thing an unnerving layer of credibility. Johnny Blake, scribbling notes rapidly, pulled Travis aside. "They are confirming the core story, Trav, but listen to the context. It is not just a werewolf legend, it is theological." The locals spoke in hushed tones of a covenant. The settlement, they claimed, held a deep ancient pact with a dark, powerful figure. They called him the patron, or sometimes the host of the woods. This entity had granted them their great strength, their ability to shift, and their protection from the outside world. In return, the community owed a very specific annual gift. The nature of this gift was obscured by time and superstition, but the implication was clear. It required great sacrifice. The old families got soft, the whittling man finally murmured, his eyes distant. They stopped paying the tariff. They thought their power was their own. You do not steal from the host of the woods. The patron, they agreed, had not simply attacked. He had been angered by the broken oath. He did not just end the settlement, he erased it. They did not just perish, they were taken back. every last soul. Swept clean, leaving nothing but the silence, one local whispered, spitting a stream of tobacco juice into the dirt. Travis recorded these tales, the heavy, unpleasant weight of the narrative pressing down on him. He told himself it was just a local quirk, a fantastic myth rooted in religious fanaticism and the isolation of the deep woods. But he could not shake the heavy, tangible feeling of truth permeating the air, a truth far more disturbing than any blurry photograph of a monster. He looked toward the dark, rising hills where the forbidden town lay hidden. Lucas was waiting, and the tales suggested that whatever had been angered was not done with its judgment. They walked into an area where human rules and human definitions of life and death did not apply. The journey the next morning was slow and punishing. Lucas, driving his own heavily modified, mud-splattered utility vehicle, Travis's team followed in their standard boxy field van, led them off the county road and onto trails that quickly devolved into barely visible game paths. The forest here was ancient, the pine needles forming a dense, springy carpet beneath the tires. Lucas navigated by instinct, pointing the truck through thickets and overstreams, completely bypassing any markers or signs Travis's global positioning system could recognize. The sun struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, filtering down in a yellow, underwater light, as if the air itself had been thickened by years of dust and shadow. After 3 hours of jarring, teeth-rattling driving, they arrived. The land opened into a narrow valley, choked on 3 sides by steep, forested hills. The town was not immediately visible, but the impression of it hit Travis first. A heavy, absolute stillness. "It is here," Lucas stated flatly, cutting the engine. The town was a hollowed-out skeleton. Burned-out homes, walls listing dangerously, blackened timbers, and streets choked with weeds and tall, unruly grass. The center square, where a public space should have been, was a sunken pit filled with damp, decaying leaves, a geological scar rather than an architectural feature. The silence was profound. It was not the peaceful quiet of an ordinary forest. It was a vacuum that pressed against the eardrums, demanding noise. There were no birds, no cicadas, no wind rustling the remaining leaves. It was the total, unnatural absence of life. The air hung heavy, charged with humidity, smelling intensely of wet, decaying earth and a sharp, metallic minerality that Travis could not name. It felt like walking into the inside of a tomb. Travis felt his professional facade slipping. "Jesus," Ben whispered, lowering his camera. "It is perfect. It is too perfect." It was the ideal disappearance. No overturned furniture, no signs of a struggle. No bodies, naturally, but also no visible signs of a hasty departure. The few household items they found, a rusted skillet, a child's wooden toy, were simply sitting, covered in dust and mold, as if the inhabitants had momentarily stepped out for a cup of coffee and never returned. They had been erased, not routed. Travis deployed the team immediately, trying to find a rhythm in the unsettling quiet. He set up remote cameras, focusing on the dark angles and the overgrown pathways, but the lenses registered only dusty ruin. The only thing of note were the shadows. They were suspiciously dark, somehow heavier and more defined than normal shade. As dusk approached, the oppressive quiet deepened, turning malicious. They settled in 2 adjacent, relatively intact log cabins near the center of the square. Travis started a fire in a rusted, abandoned stove for light. and some semblance of warmth against the creeping cold of the valley. Toby, the sound man, was sitting outside, his high-end parabolic microphone dish aimed toward the woods, his face illuminated by the faint glow of his recording equipment. He had his massive headphones clamped over his ears. Travis approached him. "Get anything interesting?" Toby pulled the phones down around his neck, his expression strained. "Nothing, Travis. That is the problem. I am picking up atmospheric pressure, but zero biological sound. Not an insect, not a rodent, no bats, no owls. The wind is completely dead inside this valley. It is like nature knows this patch of ground is off limits." He adjusted the dish, tilting it toward the north face of the hill. "This is not quiet, man. This is an acoustic absence. It is deliberate." The night was long and utterly devoid of comfort. Every creak of the aging cabin sounded like a gunshot in the vacuum of the valley. Travis tried to sleep, but kept waking in abrupt cold sweats. The mineral smell of the ground seemed to press through the floorboards. The disruption came not with noise, but with the dawning realization of silence broken. Travis woke to the sound of Ben's sharp, questioning intake of breath. The air outside was beginning to lighten, showing the dense fog that perpetually clung to the valley floor. "Where is Lucas?" Ben asked, stepping outside their cabin door. Lucas Heron's sleeping bag lay neatly unrolled, empty. His personal effects, a canteen, a worn wallet, were still inside. A growing knot of panic formed in Travis's stomach. He rushed outside, stumbling over the uneven, root-filled ground. "Check the van," he yelled. They rounded the corner of the second cabin where the field van had been parked the night before. It was gone. The spot where their transportation, their lifeline, their only connection to the outside world, had been, was empty. The doors of the van, however, were not locked. They were left slightly ajar, not broken open, but abandoned, like a shell that had shed its contents. On the soft, damp earth beside the deep divots left by the wheels, Travis saw the first truly terrifying evidence. Not human footprints, but enormous, defined impressions. They were too wide, too heavy, and the sharp, distinct indentations of 4 massive claws were clearly visible, carved by some heavy, deliberate hand. The realization hit Travis with the force of a punch. Lucas had not been a victim of the night. He had merely left. And he had not taken the van. He had merely emptied it. They were trapped, stranded in the perfect silence with fresh, terrifying tracks leading deeper into the primordial darkness. The rational framework that Travis Moreland lived by was now a crumbling edifice. Stranded, isolated, and with their guide vanished, the immediate need to escape warred violently with the inherent paranoia of their situation. Lucas could not have done this, Travis argued, his voice a little too loud, grating against the silence. Not silently, not without leaving a mark of a struggle. It has to be external. But the internal logic was flawed. An external force would have broken the doors, not left them ajar. An external force would have left tracks of pursuit, not the casual, deliberate impressions of the clawed feet alongside Lucas's own. Panic began to infect the crew, masked by frantic searching. Travis, trying to regain the initiative, decided they needed a perimeter search. He needed to cover the quadrants quickly, so he assigned a trio to the south. He sent Kayla, Johnny, and Dana south toward the overgrown creek bed, instructing them to return in 1 hour regardless of what they found. 40 minutes later, only Johnny returned. He emerged from the gloom of the pine thicket, walking stiffly, his eyes wide and vacant, fixed on some unseen point 10 miles distant. His usually ruddy complexion was ash white. "Kayla? Dana?" Travis demanded, grabbing Johnny's shoulders. Johnny did not respond immediately. He just shook his head slowly, miserably. He held out a small, mud-splattered device, Kayla's secondary cell phone. The screen was cracked, and the back of the device was covered in a heavy, dark, viscous liquid. The stench emanating from the phone was immediate and sickening. A sharp, penetrating smell of oxidized metal, like old pennies and blood left out in the sun, mingling with a faint, burning chemical aroma. Travis held the phone gingerly, examining the fluid. It was not just blood. It was thick and oily, almost industrial. "What happened, Johnny? Talk to me." Johnny finally managed to speak, his voice a thin rasp. "We were walking by the thicket. I turned my head for maybe 3 seconds, Travis. 3 seconds. She was right there. I heard nothing. Not a scream, not a struggle. Just a shift in the air, like the air itself got sucked away." He didn't mention Dana, his mind seemingly incapable of registering the simultaneous and silent vanishing of 2 people. He could not recount anything else. He was frozen in a pre-shock state, staring at the ruined phone. As Ben quickly set up the high-gain directional mics to try and capture anything, Johnny, still trembling, stumbled away from the small cluster of buildings toward an old, decaying pine tree, needing air and privacy. Toby, sitting near his soundboard, suddenly ripped off his headphones, his eyes wide with alarm. "Wait, did you hear that?" Travis, his heart hammering against his ribs, listened intently to the deep silence. "Hear what?" It was fast. A sharp intake, a heavy exhale, and then nothing. A cutoff. "Sound waves stopped dead," Toby described, shaking his head frantically. "It happened just now, near the west line." Travis spun around. Johnny was no longer by the pine tree. There were no shouts, no dragging noises, no thrashing. Just a brief recorded sound anomaly and the sudden, total absence of their folklorist. The high grass around the tree merely shimmered slightly, settling back into its stillness. The terror was not in the attack, it was in the efficiency. They were not being hunted. They were being systematically, silently removed. The horrifying phrase Lucas had whispered to Travis weeks ago now repeated in his panicked mind. Sharp and cutting. They do not leave. They take them. That night, the remaining trio, Travis, Ben, and Toby, huddled inside the smallest, most structurally sound cabin. They pushed all the remaining furniture against the door and windows, a pathetic, psychological barrier against the incomprehensible. The night brought an increase in pressure, a heavy, stifling atmosphere that felt like a weight settling on the cabin roof. Toby, clinging to his equipment, whispered, "I swear I hear walking." Travis focused, straining his ears. There it was, heavy, deliberate steps overhead. Not quick or frantic, but slow, measured, crushing the brittle old shingles. Whatever was up there was massive, but its weight seemed oddly distributed, yet its steps resonated deeply within the structure. It patrolled their cage. Travis, peering through a jagged crack between 2 loose wall logs, scanned the forest. He caught movement. Brief, angular silhouettes that moved too high above the ground for wolves or bears. They were vertical and fleeting, like glimpses of distorted, massive men moving with inhuman speed and grace. But every time Travis raised his camera phone, intending to capture the damning evidence, the silhouette vanished, absorbed back into the crushing darkness. In the dead center of the square where the fire pit used to be, Travis saw fresh disturbances in the wet earth. He grabbed a sputtering flashlight and rushed out, Ben screaming a frantic warning behind him. The ground was churned up, and there, overlapping the heavy clawed prints from the morning, were faint, recognizable human boot tracks. They were Lucas's. Travis knelt down, shining the beam. Lucas was not a victim. He was the primary investigator of the scene, meticulously checking the area where the vehicle had been. He had not been chased. He had been working. Travis felt a cold, hard knot of certainty form in his gut, overriding the last vestiges of his professionalism. Lucas was not the unfortunate fan who got caught up in local lore. He was part of the plan. He was not a fugitive. He was the hunter, and they had been lured into his trap by the promise of the perfect story. The second day ended, and with the vanishing of Johnny, Kayla, and Dana, the group was reduced to a miserable, exhausted trio. The relentless psychological pressure began to liquefy Travis's grasp on reality. He saw flickers of movement in the peripheral shadows, too tall, too dark, but he could not trust his own eyes anymore. The horror had become ambient. The night arrived with an unnatural swiftness, the sun dropping like a stone behind the western hills. The darkness here was physical. It was not just the absence of light. It was a heavy, sensory presence, smelling faintly of the damp, mineral earth and something bitter and ancient. Toby, curled into a ball, monitored his recorders. The acoustic vacuum had returned, but beneath it, the sensitive microphones were picking up something new and utterly disturbing. "Listen to this," Toby mumbled, pulling the headphones off Ben. Ben listened, then immediately recoiled, handing the device to Travis. It was not a distinct sound, not a voice or a roar. It was a low-frequency rumble, a vibration that sat right on the edge of human hearing. It was the sound of something immense moving deep beneath the bedrock, a geological sigh. "It is not animal," Toby insisted, his voice shaking. "It is vibration. It is coming from below us. I feel it in my teeth, Travis. It is like the earth is trying to clear its throat." Travis knew the rational fear. Earthquake activity. But this felt biological, rhythmic, and intentional. It was the valley itself acknowledging the presence of something ancient. Desperate to break the suffocating grip of the darkness, Travis did the only thing he could think of. He fought fire with fire. He dragged out every remaining piece of dry timber they had salvaged from the wreckage of the town, piling it into a massive heap near the center of the clearing. He soaked the wood in the remaining fuel from the discarded jerry cans found in the wreckage of the truck. When he struck the match, the resulting explosion of flame was enormous, fierce, and loud enough to briefly overcome the crushing silence. For a moment, it worked. The huge, angry bonfire cast a brilliant dancing light over the clearing, pushing the impenetrable darkness back 50 feet, creating a small, intensely lit island of sanity. The heat was immediate, comforting in its brute force. Travis felt a brief, irrational surge of hope. Light dispels shadow. Heat conquers cold. This was simple physics. But Ben, sitting closest to the flames, his face momentarily relaxed by the warmth, suddenly froze. His body became rigid, his eyes locking onto the dense black wall of trees beyond the reach of the firelight. Ben did not scream. He did not move. He simply stared, trapped in a paralysis of pure crystalline terror. Travis followed his gaze, his internal alarm bells ringing at a deafening pitch. In the thick, impenetrable darkness, the real darkness, the kind that swallows light, There was no reflection. There was luminescence. Eyes. Dozens of them. Not widely spaced, scattered animal eyes, but clustered, layered, and positioned impossibly high above the ground. 2, then 4, then 6 pairs of pupils, vertical and glowing with an unnerving, sickly yellow light that emanated from within the deep shadow, not reflecting the fire. They were not merely watching. They were waiting, arrayed in a silent, perfect perimeter. These were not wolves. These were not men. They were formations, sentinels, silent and massive, their height suggested by the altitude of their predatory gaze. The final, fragile wall of Travis's skepticism collapsed with a sickening weight. The intellectual framework he had used to navigate the world, the insistence on measurable, documentable reality, shattered into 1,000 non-Euclidean pieces. He realized the mineral smell, the oiled metallic fluid, the silence, the tracks. It had all been background noise. A theatrical prelude to the main event. This was not some forest legend cooked up to scare campers. This was systemic, organized, ancient, and alive. Travis tried to scream a warning to Ben and Toby, but his throat had closed completely, dry and tight as old leather. The sheer scale of the horror, the silent, glowing eyes of multiple giant predators surrounding them, rendered words meaningless. This is not an investigation, Travis thought, the clarity brutal and cold. This is not an ordinary place. This is a trap, and we are the last of the bait. The fire, so recently a source of comfort, suddenly felt like a spotlight, highlighting their pathetic vulnerability against the consuming night. They were exposed, illuminated for the consumption of the ancient things watching from the black. Dawn, when it finally arrived, was a gray, miserable affair. It failed to bring relief. Instead, the pale light merely confirmed the latest round of eliminations. Travis Moreland was alone. Ben and Toby were gone. Their sleeping bags, placed side by side inside the cabin, were not violently disturbed. They had been neatly rolled and pushed into the corner, as if by an unusually tidy predator. However, outside the door, near the still smoldering ashes of the bonfire, the rocks were scraped clean, showing long, heavy slide marks where bodies, or things, had been dragged across the coarse surface and into the thick woods beyond. Travis stood, trembling, his teeth chattering despite the 70-degree morning air. The exhaustion was complete, the fear now a permanent tenant in his spine. And then he smelled it. Not the mineral smell of the valley, but something specific, sickeningly familiar. Lucas Heron's aftershave, faint but unmistakable, mingling with the rank odor of unwashed human sweat and damp earth. It was right behind him. Before Travis could react, before the adrenaline could even spike, he was seized. The grip was inhumanly powerful, locking around his ribs and waist, lifting him effortlessly a full foot off the ground. The pressure was intense, threatening to crack bone. The hands, if they could be called that, were rigid, covered in short, dark, coarse fur, like heavy wire mesh. Travis gasped, the air knocked out of his lungs. He was hoisted high, carried through the choking underbrush with sickening speed, the darkness blurring past in streaks of green and black. He woke to the ringing pain of a concussion, his head throbbing violently. The air here was different, no longer forest air, but thick with the scent of salt, dry dust, and pungent, decaying herbs. He found himself laid out, roughly secured. His vision swam, then focused. He was in a small, flat clearing completely surrounded by 6 colossal gray stone monoliths. They were arranged in a perfect ancient star pattern. Travis strained against the coarse ropes binding his wrists and ankles. They were tight, rough, smelling of mold and age. Then he saw them. Tied to the base of 5 of the 6 stone pillars were his people. Ben, Toby, Kayla, Johnny, and Dana. They were alive, their eyes wide with terror and incomprehension, mouths gagged with strips of heavy cloth. Kayla's face was smeared with dried tears. Johnny was still staring into the middle distance. In the center of the stellar formation, dominating the clearing, was a basin carved directly into the bedrock, shaped like an enormous shallow bowl. It was filled with a thick, murky liquid the color of rusted iron and heavy brown dust. From the shadow cast by the 6th, unoccupied pillar, Lucas Heron stepped out. He was no longer the diner owner. His eyes were wide, feral, reflecting the gray light of the dawn with an unsettling brightness. His smile was a grimace of strained triumph. "Welcome, Mr. Moreland," Lucas said, his voice deep, gravelly, overlaid with a strange, breathy quality. "You finally found your true story." Travis strained against the ropes. "Lucas, what in God's name?" Lucas laughed, a harsh, choking sound. "God? No, Travis. God has nothing to do with this. This is older than your God." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over Travis. "You thought I was just a fan looking for a joint venture? You thought I just wanted a snapshot?" Lucas's gaze became intense, filled with a burning, generations-deep grief. "My name is Lucas Heron, yes, but I am also the son of Megan Granger. She ran. She was weak. She abandoned the lineage, and she betrayed the host. Our patron did not forgive her cowardice. The truth, revealed in this horrifying, sun-drenched arena, was a physical blow. I grew up knowing what I was, knowing what I was meant for," Lucas continued, pacing the perimeter of the stone star. "My father died trying to stop the wrath. My mother ran, carrying me, trying to dilute the blood. But the pact is not broken by distance. The dead is not erased by silence." Lucas stopped at the edge of the central basin. The host was angry. He eliminated the town for the broken oath, but he requires replenishment. He requires the return to the old ways, and I must restore the service. Lucas's muscles bulged beneath his denim shirt, unnaturally tense. He stared up at the rising sun, the light hitting his face. The transformation was fast, efficient, and horrifyingly focused. His face elongated, the human expression giving way to a muzzle covered in dark, dense fur. His shoulders stretched and bulked, tearing the seams of his shirt with a sound like ripping sailcloth. His hands lengthened, becoming massive, 5-digited paws tipped with heavy yellow-white claws. He dropped to all fours, now a colossal, compact wolf giant, powerfully built for combat and destruction. The wolf thing that had been Lucas Heron let out a low, guttural noise of satisfaction. "I brought the offering, Travis," the creature rumbled, the voice now a vibration in the throat. 6 perfect, innocent strangers. 6 souls for the 11th chapter of the lineage. I am going to end the debt, and I will take my place among the restored. The servitor was ready to begin the rite. The beast that was Lucas Heron circled the captives, his massive paws crunching lightly on the dried earth. The shift was absolute. The only recognizable feature was the cold, calculating intelligence remaining in his dark, predatory eyes. Travis watched, his mind racing, trying to absorb the sheer weight of the history Lucas had just dropped on them. This was not just a werewolf cult. It was a deeply rooted, generations-long, corrupted theology. Lucas spoke again, his voice a low, throaty rumble that physically moved the air. This settlement was not just a hideout. It was the core, an ancient clan, chosen by the host of the woods to steward this land. We were granted the strength, the quickening under the moon. He moved to the tallest of the stone pillars, dragging one massive furred flank against the rough granite. But the price, the gift, it was too heavy for the weak men of the last generation. They thought they could evolve beyond the need for the patron. They thought they could refuse the sacrifice. He described the gift not as a tribute but as a maintenance fee, a necessary annual offering to sustain the entity's power and its protection over the tribe. My grandfather, Donald Granger, tried to run. Lucas growled, the name dripping with disdain. He was one of the strongest, but he was blinded by the escape of the woman who carried me. He died by the hand of the host's herald, a warning to all who dared refuse. Travis remembered the prologue, the massive, angular shadow. The entity that had annihilated Donald was not the host, but one of its extensions. Lucas continued his confession. His mother, Megan, had escaped, only to live a life haunted by the truth of her son's nature. Lucas grew up knowing he possessed the power of the change, but isolated from the collective, carrying the shame of the bloodline's betrayal. The curse was not merely transformation, it was the magnetic, agonizing pull back to the altar, to the unfinished business. For years, I served him from the shadows, learning the paths, understanding the signs, Lucas said, gesturing toward the surrounding forest. I had to find the right sacrifice, not just anyone. The host is not satisfied with random travelers. He wants those who come seeking the truth, the unbound, as proof of my devotion and the purity of my intention to restore the bloodline. He stopped before Kayla, who was weeping silently against the cold stone. You came looking for sensation, Mr. Moreland. You came looking for evidence. I simply gave you the map. Lucas focused on the central basin, his eyes burning with zealotry. The host demanded 6 souls to seal the new pact, the number necessary to stabilize the energy of the forgotten 11th chapter of the lineage. They must be pure outsiders, unconnected to the blood. A full cleansing. He moved back, his enormous body taut with anticipation. Travis could feel the thrumming, subterranean vibration increasing, pressing against his ribs. My mother ran to save my soul, Travis, Lucas finished, taking a deep, rattling breath of the humid air. But I know better. Survival is meaningless without the collective strength. The host will reclaim us, and I will be the one who brings him home. The transformation intensified, moving beyond the simple muscular change. The wolf thing began to shudder, its fur standing on end, and a faint, acrid smoke rose from its massive shoulders. Lucas was no longer merely a shapeshifter. He was becoming the ritual's apparatus, a conduit ready to serve the ancient, terrible power of the valley. The cold certainty settled over Travis. Lucas was not crazy. He was desperate, fulfilling a curse he was born to carry. And Travis and his team were nothing more than currency in a horrifying transaction of faith and flesh. The air in the clearing was now frigid, dropping 36 degrees in a matter of minutes, fighting the morning heat with unnatural efficiency. The low, subsonic rumble from beneath the earth increased in volume, vibrating the ground like a giant, badly tuned drum. Lucas, The massive wolf servitor lifted one colossal paw, its claws scraping harshly against the rough granite of the altar stone. With a fluid, practiced motion, he sliced the heavy claw across the thick, dark hide of his own forearm, releasing a quantity of dense, nearly black blood. He lowered his paw over the carved basin, the thick brown liquid already sloshing inside. Travis now recognized the smell as pulverized bone meal and stagnant rainwater waited. 6 heavy, viscous drops of Lucas's dark, hot blood hit the surface of the concoction. The reaction was instantaneous and violent. The liquid in the basin hissed with an internal energy, and a blinding, unnatural luminescence erupted from the pit. The light was sickly yellow, a painful, radioactive glow that seemed to eat the color out of the morning. Simultaneously, the 6 stone pillars surrounding them activated. They pulsed with the light, the gray granite glowing from within. A low-frequency hum, the one Toby had recorded, amplified into a terrifying, sustained drone that resonated deep in the chests of the captives, scrambling their inner equilibrium. Toby, his eyes wide and panicked, began to scream against the gag, his body arching uselessly against the thick ropes. Ben, the hardened skeptic, looked about to vomit, his face a mask of psychological agony. Travis wrenched his wrists against the coarse binding, the rope biting deep into his flesh, drawing blood that instantly chilled and dried in the intense cold of the clearing. The bonds were unyielding, laced, he realized, with sinew. The luminous haze hanging over the basin began to coalesce. It was a gathering of shadow and density. The edges of the light warped, pulling in the surrounding darkness, forming a tangible, swirling vortex. This was a physical manifestation, the energy of the ancient pact drawing together matter, shadow, and millennia of accumulated dread. The smell of rancid metal and the sharp, burning chemical odor reached a painful peak, making Travis's eyes stream. The structure began to gain definition. It was impossibly huge, quickly dwarfing the stone pillars, which stood at least 12 feet high. It was coalescing from the vapor, but its form was immediately unsettling. It was a werewolf, yes, but its proportions were monstrously distorted. It was too tall, built of sharp angles and rigid lines. Its limbs were disproportionately long and thick, like the twisted roots of a dead redwood. Its surface was not fur and muscle, but a dark, jagged hide, resembling the heavy, cracked bark of an ancient poisoned tree. The host of the woods had arrived. It was the physical embodiment of the broken pact and the consuming, ancient power of the forest. The air pressure dropped again, sickeningly, as the colossal entity finished pulling itself together above the altar. The dread was a physical weight pressing Travis into the dirt. The creature stood over the altar, a monolith of grotesque living flesh. Its presence exerted a palpable force, an invisible gravity that stole the air and dampened all sound. This was the host of the woods, the dark god of the transformation, ancient and utterly terrifying. Its size defied easy comprehension. It was easily 25 feet tall, its massive shoulders looming over the tallest pines surrounding the clearing. Its muzzle was elongated, covered in stiff, coarse, graying hair, but lacked the familiar predatory features of a wolf. Instead, its face was dominated by enormous, hollow eyes, deep, unblinking voids of absolute darkness and indifference. The odor that rolled off the host was crushing. It was the smell of history itself. A dense mixture of decomposed pine needles, cold granite dust, and a powerfully acrid metallic bitterness, like the corrosive scent of blood spilled so long ago it had turned into elemental dust. The smell was so strong it felt like a physical assault, scraping the back of Travis's throat. Lucas, the wolf servitor, was trembling violently, falling to his knees before the immense structure. His head bowed low, his muzzle touching the scorched earth of the altar, his posture one of complete, terrified submission. He let out a deep, rasping sound, a noise that sounded like gravel churning in a sinkhole. Travis's mind translated the core meaning. "I brought the gift. 6 souls, unblemished. Accept them. Return to me the lineage." The host of the woods did not immediately move. Its great bark-like chest moved with a slow, powerful rhythm, a heavy internal mechanism that suggested vast power contained. Then, with agonizing slowness, the god began to bend, its colossal body articulating at unnatural angles, until its face hovered directly over the central basin and the offerings, the 6 terrified humans. Its head was easily the size of a small automobile. The massive dead eyes surveyed the captives. The creature's breath, when it arrived, was a low, resonant vibration, a deep, guttural sound that rattled the stones of the pillars and shook the very bones in Travis's skull. It was the sound of wind howling through a vast underground cavern. Travis felt the heat of that ancient respiration on his face, the air smelling of raw earth and something indescribably foul and bitter. The expectation was immediate: violent consumption, the sealing of the pact. But the immense entity did not touch them. Instead, its massive paw, wider than Travis's entire torso and looking more like the root of an immense dead tree than a limb, moved suddenly, not toward the bound humans, but toward the supplicant. Without warning, without a sound of effort, the host snatched Lucas, the powerful wolf servitor, lifting him effortlessly into the air. Lucas, instantly transformed from the arrogant hunter to a whimpering, struggling toy, let out a choked, desperate sound of confusion and betrayal. The massive wolf thing was held aloft, dangling 20 feet in the air by the host's colossal tree-root paw. His powerful struggles were futile, pathetic against the sheer, silent power of the god. His loyal service had lasted exactly until the moment of presentation. The great, angular head of the host lowered, its dead eyes focusing on the struggling servitor. The god spoke again, and the sound was the deep, terrifying grind of tectonic plates shifting, a noise that cracked the air and vibrated the world. Just one pitiful pup. The voice expressed no anger, only a vast, geological disappointment. Lucas's offering of 6 extraneous human souls, strangers, uninitiated and outside the bloodline, was worthless. An insultingly small down payment on an ancient, vast debt. The gift was rejected. The servitor was unrecognized. I am owed the 11th chapter, restored. Not this paltry, irrelevant delivery. Lucas let out a high-pitched, utterly broken whimper, a sound of absolute despair. His devotion, his betrayal of his lineage, his entire doomed journey, had been for nothing. The host brought Lucas close to its massive, dark maw. There was no hesitation. The act of destruction was quick, brutal, and devoid of emotion. The sound was a sickeningly fast, wet snap, like a large piece of brittle, dry clay being broken in half. The host of the woods consumed its failed servant. It happened in seconds. Then the immense creature straightened, dropping the remaining unrecognizable remnants of Lucas back onto the earth near the basin. An immediate, crushing silence descended on the clearing, thicker and more profound than any silence that had preceded it. The captives, Travis, Ben, Toby, Johnny, Kayla, and Dana, were locked in a shared vision of irretrievable horror. The blood offering, the sacrifice, the ritual, it was all meaningless. They had been spared, not by mercy, but by their insignificance. They were too small, too mundane, too human to serve the purposes of this ancient, terrible power. The trauma they had just endured was not the culmination of a ritual. It was simply background noise during the disposal of an unsuccessful messenger. They met each other's eyes. The terrified question hung unspoken in the air. Why are we still here? The host of the woods paid them no attention whatsoever. It had finished its transaction. It slowly turned its massive, angular body away from the altar. With slow, earth-shaking steps, its movement was characterized by the systematic demolition of the old-growth forest. It did not sneak away. It simply walked, crushing 100-year-old pines underfoot with casual indifference. It carried with it the combined odor of granite, ancient war, and bitter, unspeakable power. For the god, these 6 remaining humans were not prey. They were debris. The crushing of the trees continued until the colossal, towering silhouette vanished back into the primordial density of the woods, taking the supernatural cold and the sound of vibrating stone with it, leaving only a fresh, heavy silence and the terrible, profound realization of their survival. The 6 survivors, still bound, slowly began to register the terrifying truth. They had been left behind. Travis, struggling to breathe through the dryness of his throat, worked on his bonds with desperate, bloody determination. His internal landscape was utterly unrecognizable. The rationalist was dead, flayed by the sights of the host's absolute indifferent power. He was no longer a blogger seeking proof. He was a traumatized witness, burdened with a truth that would destroy the very framework of human sanity. He finally managed to tear the coarse fiber binding his wrists,